I listened to the audiobook of Blonde by Joyce Carol Oates, and then I watched the movie of the same name, which is currently streaming on Netflix, and now I am about to compare the book versus the movie. Welcome back, or if you are new here, welcome. My name is Katrina and I make bookish content here on this channel every week, and then movie reviews here at the weekend. And I love to make a book versus movie video. So I will leave a playlist of my spoiler-free book versus movie videos linked up above. As always, when I make a book versus movie video, I completely understand that when an author signs over the rights to their book to a movie studio, that movie studio can do whatever they would like with that. They can change the characters, change the name, change the whole plot if they want to. However, I really like comparing and contrasting and noticing those similarities and differences, and then bringing my thoughts to you here. So I had not heard of Blonde by Joyce Carol Oates before I heard that it was going to be made into a movie about a year ago. And so the audiobook has been on my radar until closer to movie release time, and then the movie release stuck up on me, so I listened to it very quickly so I could then watch the film. The film is so long. It's nearly a 3-hour film. And the book is not that long. In the scheme of audiobooks, it's on the shorter side. It's around about 8 hours. It's not a super long audiobook. And so it felt a lot like things were being dragged out slightly more in the film than they were in the book, because obviously a book has its own pace and its own kind of like plot points, and we go through and we have to have some description that we don't need to have when it's on the screen, because we can see it visually there before us on the screen. We can see what people are wearing, we can see where they are, we can see how they're sitting, we can see what they're sitting on, and so you don't need to put that into the book, into a movie, and yet it still felt like the pace was very slow compared to the book, which is interesting. Normally a book pace would feel slower or on par with a movie, because the movie's trying to get through things a little quicker, and yet there are still some things that are left out of the movie that was in the book. So we have a whole section at the start of the book where we go way back to when Marilyn's first born, or Norma Jean's first born, and then we sort of see her growing up, and we see her relationship with her mother and how difficult it was for them, and an absent father and things like that. But then we go on to see how Marilyn becomes Marilyn, and her first marriage, and the way her first husband went into the military and kind of exploited her, and how the photos that we know exist came to be. And that part very much isn't in the movie. So the part with the mother and the early days and the difficulty growing up and kind of living in poverty, that bit is very much the start of the movie. But then we have this whole chunk cut out that we sort of see the results of when we then see Marilyn's relationship with Joe DiMaggio. That comes up then, but it's not dealt with as a thing in the movie as a whole, whereas it's dealt with in the book as a whole thing. Like a good hour of the book is dedicated to that early time with Marilyn. But then the movie does deal with her relationship with two people at the same time, which is interesting. And the movie is quite controversial in the sense that it's got an NC-17 rating, which Netflix doesn't tend to produce movies with an NC-17 rating. But the story is a dark story, and Marilyn's life was a dark life, and so that NC-17 rating does seem appropriate anyway. And I believe the film's director has basically said the same thing, that NC-17 rating is appropriate. Apparently the NC-17 rating comes from the scenes of miscarriage, and also scenes involving JFK, but in the book very much the scenes with Marilyn and her relationship with two people at the same time seemed to me to be the more sort of explicit scenes, and they were sort of toned down and cut out and glossed over in the film, which is interesting because I think that those moments that were cut out of the film that I've mentioned, so that first marriage and then sort of the darker elements of that polyamorous relationship, I would say, those are definitely what I would say to be the darkest moments of the book, and they're not included in the film, and yet the film itself is still very dark. Then we have sort of drug usage, which again is definitely examined more in the book. It's shown, but it's shown briefly and it's glossed over in the movie. And again, that's what I thought going into the film might be the reason that it has the NC-17 rating, is the drug usage, is the fact that there was, you know, a lot of strong painkillers and a lot of sort of sedatives going on, and the fact that we have a person who isn't always kind of aware of where they are and what they're doing the whole time, and yet is very much in the public eye. I thought that might be a reasoning behind the NC-17 rating as well. And then, yeah, it does, the film and the book do cover, you know, baby loss and pregnancies not going the way you wanted them to, one way or another. And again, we get more detail in the book in some sense, but the detail in the book is very much more matter of fact and yet nuanced in some ways. And I would say the way it's dealt with in the film is more graphic and more kind of raw than it is in the book. I think because in the book, obviously, it's written about, and so we have a chance for it to be just a little more sensitive or a little more character centric than the process centric, and so that's where it seems darker and it seems more sort of shocking in the film. But then that's where we've got the difference between a book being, you know, a journey and a long journey and enjoying the journey as opposed to the end result, whereas then we've got the film, and the film being, you know, we have to have some drama to keep the audience engaged, especially because we've made the decision to make this a 3-hour film. And yet it didn't necessarily keep me engaged. I wouldn't say that I personally enjoyed either the book or the film. I wouldn't reread the book. I wouldn't rewatch the film. But then I don't think that I would necessarily have been drawn to read the book had the film not been coming out. I've been interested in other stories about Marilyn Monroe, and I've watched documentaries about Marilyn Monroe. And so therefore I think I probably would have been drawn to the film, and I think if this had come out in the cinema, I think I probably would have gone to watch it in the cinema as well. And so that's what led me to read the book, and that's what led me to watch the film, even though it was on Netflix. But I wouldn't necessarily say that I enjoyed either of them. I think the film was too long. There was some directorial and kind of shooting, editing choices that were made with the film that I think make it feel darker and take on that more kind of like somber, sedate tone of the book. So we have elements of the film that are in colour, elements of the film that are in black and white. We have sort of flashback elements that we see through Marilyn's eyes, some moments where we've got that almost like Blair Witch Gonzo style filming with the camera, where we sort of see the camera moving or see the camera going down when they're following Marilyn. So I don't know if the film was shot as if we were watching it through like a paparazzi's eyes, you know, the media that wouldn't leave her alone, the media that sort of led to her eventual spiraling down. Were we supposed to be watching it through their eyes? And I think that was some interesting choices, and we obviously didn't get that perspective through the book. The book is just telling a story of a person. And then I do feel like Arthur Miller, who's played by Adrian Brody in the film, gets less screen time in the film than he does page time in the book, but he comes off as a more sort of positive influence to Marilyn in the film than he does in the book, and I think than he kind of did portrayed by the story in real life. I feel like her relationship with Arthur Miller was kind of portrayed as a like, what's going on here? Has she lost her mind type of thing? And it's portrayed that, you know, he wasn't terribly kind and nice to her, and he was kind of not tricked or duped, but like didn't necessarily want this marriage with her in the book. But I feel like in the film it comes across as a like, oh, they met and they were married and they were in love, and she really wanted to have a baby with him, and he really wanted her to be loved and successful and happy. And so that's an interesting difference between the book and the film from my perspective. But again, we'll sort of never really know what went on between them in real life, because they're sort of not here to tell us, and they haven't, neither of them spoke out about how it was for them. And so, yeah, as I say, I didn't necessarily enjoy the book. I didn't necessarily enjoy the film. I wouldn't necessarily recommend either of them. But if you have watched the movie, do let me know what you thought of it in comments. And if you have both read the book and watched the movie, let me know what you thought of the similarities and differences. And as always, if there is a particular book to movie or book to TV show that has been made that you would like me to read and watch and bring my thoughts to here, do let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and make sure you are subscribed and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on my future movie reviews, book versus movie videos, and other bookish content here on this channel. But I will see you with another video very soon. So thanks for watching.